Okay, hey everyone, and welcome to the next part of your engineering courses where we'll be doing a bunch of different jobs on teams and individually and working on the skills we had from quarter one and then perfecting them and turning them into an actual product. So in the first video here, we're going to cover how I made these concept sketches for stage one, for stage two, and then lastly for stage three. The steps I took to make them, and I'm just going to try and remake stage one from you so you can see what it would look like for me to make it from start to finish. The major skill we're going to be using here is just the idea of isometrically drawing. Again, for a concept stage, the isometric drawing doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to really show the concept here. When you look at my concept drawing, you can see how some parts of it are really well done and other parts are a little messier. And that's because I'm not too worried about being perfect the whole way through. I'm worried about just having you see the idea and the parts that go with it. So let me pull these aside and show you how I did this from start to finish. So the first thing I really wanted to do was go online and look at what makes a high striker in order to get ideas on what my high striker would look like. So here's a list of the components and a list of different types of components from the actual carnival games themselves. And most of them have a very common theme in their design. They have three components. So if I zoom in and you look at it, let's look at this one. The three components they have are: one, they have these supports on the side to keep it straight. Number two, they have this lever, which is used to launch the collar, the thing in the middle that hits the bell. And then number three, they have this rail that it goes up and down. But the major issue I had to think about when looking at this was designing most of these components would be really hard if I made them from metal, because most of them are made out of metal parts, and I don't have the tools to machine metal. So I had to make something a little different using wood instead, because I want to be able to prototype this quickly and make sure it works and make sure it's fun and figure out how to use it. So to do that, I had to borrow essentially a simplified version of the design in my head and then edit it so it made sense. So this is basically how I did that. Let me switch the camera over. I thought really hard about what I would have to do if I were going to make it myself, and I realized that I have a lot of tools to work with wood, but not very many to work with metal. So I thought that the major features they have are this: it has a rail, it has the supports, and then it has the lever. So the rail just has to be a part that goes up and down that something can sit on or on top of. So these things I can make pretty easily. So what I did is I said, here's the rail part first. The rail part is just going to be a really tall wood or metal pole. And I figured I want to make it a little taller than I am. So since I'm, 5'8", 5'9", I figured it should be about 7 to 8 feet. So I said about 8 feet, which is roughly 8 times 12 is 80, 96 inches. So about 96 inches for this rail. And then I needed to have a collar that went around it. So the collar that went around it basically just had to be this circular piece like this. And then it had to have a little inner diameter here, so that this space, just go out this way, had to basically be less than whatever this was. So it had to basically be such, or more than whatever this was. It had to be so that I could fit inside this rail, basically. So the way I did that is I said that this diameter has to be about, I guess about half an inch was my thinking. And I thought that this one would be like 0.4 inches or something. So they'd be really close, but not like right on. Okay, so now that I had the rail, I had to have the supports. So if I'm going to do a rail that looks like this, that's just literally a metal bar, the tricky part is figuring out how do I make sure that this metal bar sits straight and does what it's supposed to do. And the easy solution that they used is they kind of glued it to a back. So they would get like a board, so they'd get like a wood board like this, and they would put the bar onto the board like that. The problem I had with this is getting a large piece of plywood is really difficult to work with and really hard to support. And I'd have to kind of make some like supports back here like this. And I didn't want to do that because that's a lot of effort to manage just a wide piece of wood like this, especially at my house where there's just not a lot of space because I don't really have a room to have a giant piece of plywood that is 8 feet tall by, I don't know, 3 feet wide or whatever this would be. I couldn't quite tell. So I had to come up with a different idea. So I wanted to make it able to be taken apart very easily, and the way to do that is to make it screwed together. So I envisioned encasing it in this kind of box shape like this, and then maybe putting some legs on it so that I could take these off and move it around if I wanted to. So with this shape in mind, I started actually concepting what I wanted that to look like. So for this part of the concept drawing, you're probably going to want a straight edge and a bigger eraser. When I say straight edge, you can use a ruler. I just mean something that's straight so that it's like very clear drawing straight lines. Anyway, we're also going to try and do it in isometric. It doesn't have to be perfect again, but roughly 30 degrees is how you want to do it. So about this way. So not straight, but about this way. So in drawing this, the first thing I had to think about was drawing these legs and the support. So I'm going to do it from this side first so I can see this, and then I'll draw the rest in as I go. So I'll use a line like this. And then I got to make sure that it comes out for the leg. So I'll do it about the same angle, about so. And again, I'm not being super duper precise with my measurements. I just want to make sure that it looks roughly the same, really, that it looks good. It goes out this way. This one comes straight up again. Connect these like that. Connect these like this. Okay, so this one's going to have to be quite a bit taller because it has to be for the whole of this side. So I'll just make sure it goes all the way up like that. Whoops. That's what the eraser's for. It'll be for other things in a bit. Okay, I'll move this in a little bit like this. I definitely want to make sure it's a little bit lower. About here, like so. Make sure this goes the other way, like this. Straight down again. And you can see I'm just following the same rules we follow with isometric drawing. I'm trying to make sure that they're roughly 30 degrees. I want to make sure that the lines make sense. I want to make sure that it's just about accurate. Again, I'm not too worried about it being specifically accurate. I can measure that out when I get into Onshape. So right now I'm much more focused on just making a very readable, clean image of what my idea is. And that's really what I'm going to repeat over and over and over again is has to be a readable, clean image. So when someone sees this, they have to know exactly what the design would look like, even if they don't know the exact dimensions or it's not like perfectly drawn in to like look ideal. I'm not looking for an artist's work here. I'm looking for, just the concept, the idea of what it's supposed to be. Okay, so here's my left support that I'm thinking of. It's just kind of an L shape, and you guys obviously have seen it online. And then I need to add in the next part, which is going to be the support in the middle. So to add that, I'm just going to extend this line. It's going to go along the same route here. I need a part down here because this is where a wooden board is going to sit that will hold and support the actual rail itself. And then this is going to come out this way so that I have another piece that comes out like this. Extend this line along the same idea. Make sure this goes all the way. There we go. Out like this, out like this, out like this. And now I'm just kind of getting into the finishing touches where I'm just kind of adding tidbits here and there to make sure it's done for the concept. I think there are obviously some flaws in my concept drawing, and these are things I'd have to go back and fix or things I'd have to add later. And I'll skip that part in the video. I'll kind of skip ahead, do a little time skip so you guys can see what the finished product would look like. But these are the basic in-between steps of how you would get there. This goes there. Last line here. Okay, so this is supposed to be an actual board in the middle. So this board needs to be finished first. Goes from here to here, like this. So you can start to see where I'm letting myself down on the isometric drawing. So I probably am going to go back and change some of these to be a little more accurate. So like that one should be here. This should be here. Things like this. Let's just say it's a good thing I have my eraser. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I have a few more steps to actually fix this mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this mistake and then speed through it in a time lapse, and then I'll talk to you at the end. Okay, I'm back. So obviously that mistake took a lot longer to fix than I thought it would. I need to move the leg over a little bit. I just moved it too far. So now we're into the last two steps of drawing this, which is the rail, the lever, and then final touches, which is shading it. So I guess last 3 steps. In terms of finishing the actual supports, mostly what I did is just make sure that these legs lined up and that this taller part of it lined up. So now I have to get into doing the actual rail. So when doing the rail, the idea is to get this circular, like long rail, long tube, long dowel, would be the metal dowel, into these actual holes. So I've drawn these holes at the top. They're just kind of rough guesses as to what the holes would look like. I imagine it'll be pretty small, and I like it that way on purpose, particularly because in order to add this collar or fit it over the rail, what I'm going to do is I would hold the rail here, I would lift the rail up, and then I would move the collar onto the slot and slide the rail through the collar and through the hole in order to hold it into place. So to draw that in, mostly what I'm going to do is just make sure that the rail lines up neatly on the outside here. So I just need to line up the corner of this circle, or the edge of this circle, sorry, with the edge of this circle. So their edges are lined up, and then I'll just draw this line in here like this. And then I would do the same for the other side, but in this particular drawing, the other side is just not visible from this side of the support. So I'm just going to shade it in for now. And this you'll get into more detail on when we get to the shading part, but actually adding shading detail helps to highlight differences like this. So right now I'm just kind of doing this really simple back and forth pattern to make sure that it has kind of a circular feel to it. And then I will clean it up later in the second step of this recording. Okay, so there's the shading. Now I just need to make sure I draw on this lever. So for this first design, what you guys saw me do was add the lever in the corner as a way to hold it into place. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm just going to move it a little out so it's easier to see the other features, so that this is just a better video for you to learn from. So to do that, I simply add in the features like I would normally. So I just add in these straight drawings. And really what I'm doing here is adding a block where I'm going to essentially mount the lever. So I'll do this, draw this. Okay, so the blocks are added. Before I add the rest of it, just to give you an idea of what this lever looks like, a lever is basically a long piece of wood like this, where you push down on one side and the other side goes up. And when you push from further out, like way out, like if you push from out here instead of say here, so pushing from this spot, you get a lot more force. A really easy way to test this at home if you want to is take your door and try and open the door from as close to the hinge as possible. And you'll see it takes a lot more effort for you to actually rotate the door open from the hinge instead of all the way from the doorknob, which is like on the outside of the door. So levers work the same way. The farther out you go, the more you can hit it. So in the case of the high striker, I have to think about how long this lever is, because the longer the lever, the more force we'll put out and the easier the game will be. So I'm thinking my lever isn't going to be very long. It's only going to be about 3 feet, give or take. So that means it's 1.5 feet this way and 1.5 feet or 1.5 feet the other way. So now I need to actually draw it in. So I'm just going to make sure that I know what it looks like. I'm giving it this edge right here, this little tip, because when it sits on the collar like this, it's also going to sit on the actual platform. So if this is the rail right here and this is the platform, if I just did a really thick block like this, it would have to sit here between the two and would lift the collar off the ground. But this way, where it has this kind of cut here, it can slide in, it can push just on one side, and it won't like get in the way of the other stuff. So I figured this would be an easier way to design it. And these little drawings I'm doing on the side, these notes I'm taking, and these measurements I'm making are the same kind of things you should be doing when you are doing your concept work. It gives you an idea of the scope, even if your proportions don't. So like right now I'm thinking about how long this should be. So if this is going to be 3 feet, this probably needs to be 4 or 5 feet. So I'm thinking probably like 4 feet to start, something pretty simple, which means that this space will be 1.5 feet and this space will be 1.5 out this way, and then this part probably will be, so 1.5, a half foot, probably a half foot between the end here like this. So the lever will go out to about here is the idea. So I need to actually draw on this lever. So draw this, add this, add this, add in this design. Okay, I need to erase this stuff in the middle because that's where the lever sits, so you shouldn't be able to see that anymore. There should still be some holes here, and a rod that goes through all of them. So make that there. Rod goes through here, all the way to the other side. like that. All right, so now you can kind of get the shape of what it looks like, and the concept drawing is pretty clear in what it's about. I'm just going to draw on this collar. The only thing I really need to make sure I finish up is the actual like cleanup work. So I just need to add a couple more dimensions, write down some thoughts that I had, and then shade it in. I'm going to do that now, but I'm just going to speed through it and then talk about what I added at the end. All right, here we go. All right, so after some time, I touched up the drawing in a couple of different ways I want to talk about. So let me just start with the shading. So the number one thing I would say I did for the shading is I indicated the sides of each part by using a color. So in this case, I used dark as the left side, um, light as sort of the outside sides. So this is on the outside and this is on the absolute outside. And then I also use it to indicate the rail, and this is the only thing that's unique, and I'm going to come back to that one second. But the major thing shading has done for this drawing is that it's made it easier for me to tell which side of which thing goes where, and it's made it easier for me to tell what the overall concept looks like. Before, without this work, my lines were just a little messy because the reality is it's a concept drawing. I've done this whole thing in maybe like 22 minutes. And when you draw something that fast without really like measuring or considering or making it accurate, like say the way an artist would, you know, when you're just technically drawing it, there's no artistic skill here. It's just like putting the lines on the paper. There's going to be some errors. And the way you cover those errors up is by using other things to make it easier to see. So the dark shading on the inside here, for example, makes it easier to see that this lever, is sitting to the side of this little circle in the middle here, which is going through the middle like that. Um, and that's really the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the shading is that I made sure that the dowels, that the rails, the long lines here, the circles I'm using, that they are completely white. And I'm doing that so that you can easily see where they go in each section. Okay. The next detail I added were some notes. So here it says part A. I've done this as a call out. A call out is a detail that says look somewhere else for the rest of the information, and the rest of it's over here in part A. I swear it says part, it's just hard to read. Where I gave more information, like it's 3 feet long, it's 1.5 inches tall, this is a 45-degree cut, this is a 0.5 diameter hole, things like that. So callouts are one thing you can use to pick out different parts. I actually should probably use one here too, so let me just add that. So this is going to be part B, and I'll write over here part B. So that way, if I was looking at this, I would know like what design I was using for the collar, for example, for the striker, the thing that I'm hitting to go up and down the rail like this, up and down the rail like that. And then the other thing I included were some rough dimensions and construction hints. So rough dimensions are basically what they sound like. They're dimensions, and they are rough. They're my best guess. So I guess this would be about 4 feet, give or take. Especially if this is going to be 3 feet long, that leaves half a foot on this side and half a foot on this side. Half a foot is probably more than enough. This is most likely going to be made out of a 2x4. 2x4 is actually not, as you might think, 2 inches by 4 inches. It's actually 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So not these ones, but these ones on the outside. So leaving 6 inches back here is plenty of room for this 3.5 inches of width right here. And then it would also give me the height. And the height I said was about 96 inches or about 8 feet. That's based on the height of the rail that I picked. I decided 8 feet was about the right height. This is just a concept, remember, so after some testing, maybe the QA decides that 10 feet is better because 8 feet's too easy, or it needs to be even higher at 12 feet. It really just depends. The design would have to change, obviously, because as it gets taller and taller, the supports would have to be different, but this is the basic idea of concepting. You come with an idea, you make it into a page or a drawing, and then you're ready to start turning it into a 3D model so it's super accurate. This is a very, very rough, detailed drawing. If someone were to hand this in to me, given that it was made again in only about 20 minutes, this would probably be about a C or a B. I think there's a lot of little details that are missing, a lot of considerations to be added. I think the lines could be a little bit cleaner. It doesn't have to be super clean, but there's definitely some messes here, and the shading definitely needs a little bit of work. So this is a B. It's good. It's not bad, but it's not perfect. It could take more time. Okay, so that's part 1 of this video series for concepting, where I covered actually making the concept drawing. In part 2, I will cover a bit more about how to change this into an actual on-shape design. All right, I'll see you later, everybody. Bye.